Thank you for installing the Chargeback app for Splunk Cloud. This video is going to walk you through the process of configuring the app in your Splunk Cloud stack. Upon launching the app for the first time, it's going to go to the Chargeback portion of the app. It's going to launch that dashboard. You're going to notice a pop-up that's going to appear here with an option for you to launch a setup dashboard so you can complete the setup of the app itself. If you don't want to see this again, you can click this box and click OK, and it won't show you this pop-up again. We're going to launch the setup dashboard. The setup dashboard has a home tab and a configuration tab. I would start by clicking this app setup here after you install the prerequisites. If you haven't, please do that. We need the lookup editor and the Splunk machine learning toolkit. Then you can click on this button, which basically going to help you schedule the job so you don't have to go to settings, schedule jobs and reports. You can just do it from this setup screen. In this case, it's a good idea to enable all of these jobs here. This is the summary job. This one here basically derives the Splunk Cloud search heads in your stack. This is your custom identity data store, which we're gonna talk about in a minute. And this is the actual final identity KV store that we use for enriching the data as we're summarizing with this job here. The second section talks about if you'd like to alter the out-of-the-box search resource usage formula. These are different weights. You can choose a number between 1 and 9. I would suggest maybe you just keep it as is for now. And if you need to, or unhappy, or you don't like the way the calculations are, you can come back here by increasing this number. For example, you're telling the summary job that you want to emphasize more on the CPU weight, meaning if the search consuming high CPU, the higher the number here, the more emphasis you put on CPU. This 7 option here is just a summary index that we need. We strongly recommend to have at least 13 months or about 400 days worth of data. Um, we recommend using this index called chargeback_summary, but you can create any one you like. This just explains that the weights that I talked about here from 1 to 6, what they are. And then when you're done, you can just click the Save button, and now we'll automatically adjust anything you change in here. So when you're done saving, you can just quit this tab and go back here. Now we need to run these jobs for the first time. The first one would be your Cloud Stack search head, which runs daily. The second one is the most important one, which is the sets your identities, your custom identity data store. I have an example here for you, like a template. Wherever you have information about a user and their how you tie a user to a business unit and department, whatever data store you have today, even if it's a lookup table, it could be an index. This data can be in Active Directory, it could be in a specific index in your environment. Wherever you have that information, you just start with that, like input lookup, or you can do index equal whatever that index is. Just normalize the field names to the field names the app uses. So the username, whatever username you have in your data set, just rename it to user_name, the business unit, department, the name of the employee or contractor, the type. This could be a service account, could be full-time employee, it could be a contractor, it could be a default account, internal account, etc. It's important to have that. If you don't have it, it's not a big deal. These are the two most important aspects, obviously, the username. The title of that employee in the organization is nice to have. The email address is also nice to have, and the manager is really a good thing to have just in case we want to have that relationship between people and their managers. Um, After you make these, get the data set from either an index or input lookup, after you map to your fields in here and rename them, then you just go ahead and run this for the first time, and then go ahead and save this. This is pretty much the only job that you need to really alter and change. So when you're done saving it, you can exit from it. Um, and then you want to follow through by running the this job here, the identities KV store gen job, which puts everything together. Um, if you haven't done that already, basically this third one is going to summarize identities from your search head into a summary index, right? So I'm going to extract all the identities, all the users that you have defined in the on your search head, and store that in a summary index, so we don't have to actually create them manually. This is a nice option because we want to make sure we run this every day to make sure we capture all the users that you have defined on a search head. This also explained in the configuration process here. Um, if you have multiple search heads in your environment or search head clusters, we do need to create this job on every other search head or search head cluster that you have. So let's say, for example, you have an ES search head, ITSI search head, and a search head cluster. Okay. And let's say, for example, you installed this app here, you installed it on the search head cluster, which is fine. You can install it anywhere you want. Um, you don't have to create the job. It's already created for you. All you need now is to actually create this job on the ES search head and the ITSI search head. So we can make sure we have all the users defined there on daily basis. If they add or remove users from these searches, we keep track of that, and we are able to use that data to build the association between users and business units and departments. Um, so, uh, so after you define that job, run that for the first time, and then basically you've finished working your custom identity data store. You've finished running and creating these jobs in the other search heads, and you ran that for the first time on the search head you installed the app on. You finish by um, running this number 4 here, which puts everything together, like I mentioned, right? So this is going to put everything together. It's going to take data from all the search heads, all the users. Then it's going to step through every identity. It's going to look into the custom identity data store that you have created previously, and it's going to create the final identities with all the enrichments in place. So that's basically what needs to happen. Really, again, just the main thing is just for you guys to make sure you create your custom identities. You create the job that we talked about on every search head or search head cluster, put everything together with this job, and that completes the initial setup, the foundation of building associations between a user and a business unit. But there are other methods we're going to talk about in a minute that would help you do that mapping. It's not just user to business unit and department. We have other methods that we can use with this app. So primarily, after that is complete, you can go ahead and run the summary job for the first time. Even if you run it multiple times, it has a way to detect that you already ran it, and it's going to make sure you don't produce any duplicates when you run it. So there is no issue in you running it for the first time. Um, the job is scheduled to run every hour. So obviously, in this case, it already ran. I'm trying to run it again. There's no new data. That's why we get this warning. That's okay. No problem there. Um, but we really need to go back and continue the setup process to make sure we have all the the options for us to enrich the data. And the options are really 7. So I call this the 7 enrichment principle. It starts with the user, but sometimes the user is difficult to use because it could be Splunk system user or nobody. So that is not something that would be able to help us, especially when it comes to data model accelerations. They always run as Splunk system user. So we need other methods. We're going to talk about other methods that would help us. The second option here is the if for example you're an organization that has a lot of contractors, and if you want to associate the business unit of that contractor to the business unit of the manager, this is one nice way to do that. We have a table which I will show you how to fill that out. And we basically use that as a second in priority, meaning I'm going to try to find a business unit and department using the user itself. I couldn't. Then I go to the second step saying, okay, do I have the business unit and department for the manager? If yes, then that's great. If not, we have other methods as well. The third in priority here will be the role itself, the Splunk role. So if you have already done that work where the roles themselves are really represent a business unit in the organization, then by all means use that. Now, I wouldn't use the admin role or the user's role. I would use something very specific. You don't have to use all of these options. I would just use a little of each and use what you know for sure is going to guarantee that association, right? This is one of my favorite, the apps, which is fourth in priority. Um, Meaning that if you have in your organization, if you created apps for your various business units, which I highly recommend you do, um, and anything they do from that app, anything they dispatch, the mere fact that they actually launched that app and launched dashboards, or they ran ad hoc searches, or if they have report acceleration, data model accelerations, summary indexing, whatever they're doing from that app, we're going to register that and associate that usage to their business unit, which is a wonderful way to help with that, especially that when you don't have really good users that you can use, you don't have a good database, you don't have a good CMDB that you can rely on. This can help you just simply do that with Splunk. You create an app and ask the business unit to just use that app instead of sharing an app like the search app or something else. Obviously, when you can, if you can do that, right? The fifth option is the job itself. It could be maybe there is a specific data model that that business unit uses and only them use it in a search app, as an example. You can use this option to map that single job to that business unit, right? If you wanted to. The sixth option is basically the fact that they're searching an index called B unit 123, the fact that they're running searches or dashboards or anything associated with these indexes, we will detect that and map the usage to that business unit. And finally, also one of my favorites, just like the apps, where something I highly recommend. This could be at the end of the road. I couldn't find anything. What can we do now? Maybe it's an ITSI search it, and that's your IT ops business unit, and that's the only business unit that needs it. That's fine. We just associate the ITSI search it with that business unit, and we're done. I'm going to show you how to do that in a second. Or it's the ES search it, and that's your security operation business unit, as an example. You can associate these two searches like that. Then you only have to, what's left over, the searching cluster or your other core or ad hoc search heads, we can then use the other methods for these and rely on them. Now, why is this seventh? Meaning, if I couldn't find any association here, or here, or here, or here, at the end of the road, this could be like your global default or catch-all, whatever you want to call that. And finally, these can be shuffled. Okay, meaning if you rather have the managers be your first in priority, we can move that in a macro very easily. So you're basically change the priority for managers from 2 to 1 and for users from 1 to 2. Or you don't, or you can delete it from the equation, meaning you don't want to use that. Say you don't want to use users or managers or roles, you just want to use apps and search heads, 4 and 7, that's by all means. That's all you'd leave in that macro, and that's pretty much it. And then it's just the two that would take would be used, period. For every for every one of these priorities, I have created a macro that I use in the summarization job and a table associated with that macro that enriches the data. This is probably the most difficult aspect of all of this, but in either the Showback and Chargeback app, um, in the Setup Help tab here, you have you have these tables right here in front of you in panel 2 and 3. So for example, if you wanted to go ahead and associate users to business units, you can basically click on that on the button here. It will open up the table using the lookup editor, and you can go ahead and enter the users here. This supports wildcards, so if you have users beginning with, ending with, it could be containing. You can use that if it's a service account. Set the type as a service account using these some of the examples that I ship with the app. Um, and then if we come back to it as another example, I'll give you another example of the app to business unit. The rest is really the same idea, the same concept. Um, in this case, you have two options in here. You can say you can just name an app and it's unique to one of the search heads in your environment. If it's not unique, right, you probably want to use the search head and the app name, right, together. So these together would have to match for me to set my business units to special projects and my department to whatever, right? In this case, in this line item, any search head with this app can would get this business unit association. All right. So really, it's up to you. Again, these are wildcards as well. You can have starting with, containing, and ending with. Um, So these tables are obviously important for the setup process. That's how when the summary job the summary job runs every hour, it uses this data to make sure and guarantee we are accounted for everything that for accounted for every usage associating that usage with a business unit in your organization. Um, in that sense, what's left right now, after I've done that, is setting up two other important tables for mainly for the chargeback use case. Okay, and these are your Splunk Cloud entitlements and your B unit entitlements allocation. So let's look at the first one. The first one is going to have your SVC, your which is your the Splunk Virtual Compute. This is going to be your dynamic data active search or local search, the local index that you were defined and used on day-to-day basis. This is going to be your dynamic data active archive, or if you own that, you may not have this option. You may not have purchased that from Splunk Cloud. So if you don't have it, you can ignore it. Set this to 1 or 0, whatever works for you. This is your dynamic data self-storage. This is you going out and to AWS and creating your own S3 bucket. And if you want to, you can put in the entitlement and your yearly cost. The yearly cost for these first two can you can contact your Splunk account team, and they will be able to help you and provide this information to you so you can plug it in here, and it would help you get started with chargeback. Uh, the units for DDS, DDA, and DDSS, these are units of 500 gig blocks. So this is not 275 gig. This is 275 times 500 gig, right? So each unit equals 500 gig. Same thing for DDAA, same thing for DDSS. When you're done, save this table. Then you have one more that you need to set up, which is your, each business unit and their allocation, their whatever you want to call it. Some organization call it quota, or their portion or their share of your Splunk Cloud environment. So in this fictitious environment, this demo lab, I have an organization here that has 5 business units. And I mean, I can use the showback, and that's why the showback is very important, because the showback is going to help you determine how much they're using SVC wise, so you can figure out these numbers, right? But at the end of the day, what I like you to make sure you have is a situation where this just show us what we put in these tables, right? If we have 100 SVCs that you own today, you want that to be equal right down here when you um, do your allocation for each one of the business units, right? You're going to use the showback to help you with that. And then, at the end of the road, right, you want that to equal to what you're actually responsible for paying, which is in this fictitious example, this example demo lab here is 100 SVCs. Same exact concept for DDAS, and we can use the showback actually to help us with this as well. At the end of the road, we want that to equal what you actually own. In this example, the customer owns 275 500 gig blocks, and it needs to add up to that across all the different business units. Obviously, some business units may need to use more of Splunk, some need to use less of Splunk. Like in this example, all they really need is just 5 SVCs. But for this business unit, they really have many more users, a lot more requirements. Could be your security operation, could be IT operation. Obviously, they need more of Splunk. So we'll use the showback to determine what that should look like. Um, Right. So basically, that's these two tables. Beside these two tables, you have the 7 other tables. Think of the other 7 tables. These are all great for the showback aspect. The summary job we talked about, the associating a user to a business unit and department, all that good stuff is going to help us with the showback. And that's probably the most important thing in this app, really to give you an understanding how Splunk is being used, right? So after you've done all the enrichment, you need to give the app about a day because of to start summarizing the data. The next day you come in, you're going to start seeing this dashboard working. If you want to speed up the process, I'm going to show you how to do that too. Going back here, to the tracker job, if you wanted to speed the process, say you ran this for the first time and you just ran it like a few minutes ago, what I like you to do then change this 1 hour at hour to -1D at D, and then change this from 0 to 1 because we'd already done the last hour. So now we're going to do all of yesterday, right? Including to all of yesterday all the way to an hour ago. But you must match this down here as well on line number 16. You come down here, same exact thing, change that 1D at D and make this 1 hour, okay? And then run the job. Um, oh, I'm sorry, and I would like you to remove this line number 32 before you run that job, okay? Run it, don't save the job, right? This is just you filling in the index, right? So you have data to start using right away. I prefer if you don't do that if the stack is very busy and we don't want to add insult to injury, right? So if you can wait a day for this to just run every hour, looking at 1 hour, that would be obviously my preference. But if you have to fill in the summaries, you can do it like that. Other things you can do if you want to go nice and slow, you can definitely say something like instead of -1 hour, we go to say minus 20 hours, right? So it's just a few hours of data, and then the next time you run this, you change this to minus 20 hour at hour to say 10 hour an hour. Okay, and then obviously you want to make sure you map this to this same exact thing. And then the third time you run this is from minus 10 to minus 1. This would go in 3 stages instead of one big job. You can run it in 3 stages if you wish. Um, um, I also, if you have a very large environment, make sure when it starts running, send the job to the background. It will guarantee not canceling on you, and will guarantee that you get your data summarized beautifully. Um, and I'm definitely going to create more videos on this. There's so much more to add. I want to just get you guys started. So please let us know if you have any issues. Contact your account team. They know how to find me. My email address is ak1@splunk.com. Happy to help you even to get you going. And we're going to set up an external Slack channel for this so we can support you as much as we can. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.